Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever had a completely cast iron promise just fall apart on you? Well, today we are diving into a staggering piece of ancient literature that actually serves as a masterclass on how to protest when life completely derails. We're unpacking Psalm 89. Now, this text transforms from a cosmic hymn into a devastating historical lament. And a lot of times people read this and they just see two entirely different poems awkwardly smashed together. A massive celebration of power, abruptly followed by a depressing complaint. But as our source material reveals, reading it that way entirely misses the absolute brilliance of what's really going on here. So let's dive into this.
We have to begin with a really shocking, heavy reality. Imagine, just for a second, being an ancient Israelite living through the sheer trauma of the exile. You've got this ironclad divine promise, this unbreakable covenant that a king from David line would sit on the throne forever. And then you look out your window. The city is utterly destroyed. Hostile empires have completely dismantled everything you know. The crown is literally in the dust. The walls are breached. The text captures this profound trauma perfectly, crying out, "Lord, where is your steadfast love of old?"
It's an incredibly intense pivot, right? Like, how does a towering hymn of cosmic praise end in such bitter, seemingly hopeless despair? Well, to understand this emotional whiplash, we have to see that the author isn't just writing down random, fleeting feelings. They are actually building this massive, meticulously constructed three-story theological skyscraper before letting it all crash down. The praise at the beginning isn't just a warm-up. It actually establishes the very foundation of the complaint. Our source reveals a really deliberate three-step architectural descent. Think of it like a journey. We start perfectly at the absolute top in the heavens with the divine counsel. Then we plunge down into the sea to master chaos. And finally, we land solidly on the earth with the Davidic king. Understanding these three specific steps is absolutely crucial to unlocking the entire text. So, let's start at the top. Movement 1, the ascent, the assembly of the holy ones. It's super fascinating to see how our source actually defines this assembly. When the text talks about the assembly of the holy ones, or the sons of God, it's describing real, created spiritual entities in the skies. It's not just some decorative metaphor, and it's definitely not an earthly gathering of human judges or town elders. It is a genuine, literal, heavenly council over which God presides. The whole argument here boils down to incomparability. Sure, the unseen world has a hierarchy, and these heavenly beings occupy an incredibly elevated place within it. But the author's argument is that Yahweh is fundamentally incomparable to even the most exalted heavenly host. He's species unique. By having the highest possible spiritual beings praise God, the author establishes this unquestionable corroboration of God's faithfulness. Think about it. If the most powerful beings in the room, the ones most capable of being rivals, are bowing down, well, his supremacy is absolute. That brings us to movement 2, the descent, crushing the chaos monster. From the orderly heavens, we plunge down into the great symbol of ancient disorder, the raging sea. And here, we meet Rahab. Now, in the ancient Near East, the sea was the ultimate image of chaos and unpredictability. You can basically think of Rahab, this sea dragon, as the ancient final boss, or a mythological Godzilla that personified everything ancient people feared about the ocean. But our author actually strips this ancient trope of its usual suspense. Rather than a myth where God struggles to defeat a rival in some suspense-filled cosmic battle, crushing Rahab symbolizes God's effortless, ongoing restraint of disorder. Because chaos has many faces, right? It's the surging sea, for sure. It's terrifying natural disasters. But it also has a historical face, hostile empires. And here is an amazing realization from our source. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, crushing Rahab is repeatedly identified with the defeat of Egypt at the Exodus. God parting the Red Sea and crushing Egypt is the exact same concept as crushing the chaos dragon. He rules the raging sea without even breaking a sweat. And that lands us on dry ground for movement 3, the earthly hinge, the throne of David. Having established God's absolute mastery over the heavens and the sea, cosmic reality finally touches down into human history. Our source reveals what it brilliantly calls a diptych of dominion. It's like a hinged two-panel painting. The unseen realm, with its heavenly thrones surrounded by the sons of God, is perfectly mirrored by the seen realm, with its earthly throne occupied by the Davidic king. The human king actually becomes God's appointed, functional representative on earth. And because the king is God's earthly counterpart, he's given some seriously incredible delegated power. The text literally says, "I will set his hand on the sea and his right hand on the rivers."
Stunningly, the authority given to this earthly king includes a share in God's own power to subdue chaotic, hostile forces. Remember Rahab, that ancient final boss we just talked about? The earthly king's victory over hostile nations is the historical form of God's cosmic victory over the deep.
This actually taps into a massive underlying narrative regarding the nations. Before Babel, humanity had a direct relationship with God. But after the ancient fracturing at Babel, the nations were divided and allotted to the administration of subordinate divine spirits. The Davidic king is basically designed to be the ultimate cosmic workaround. It's a system to reverse that ancient fracturing, reclaiming the whole world and bringing the disinherited nations back under a king called the firstborn, highest of the kings of the earth.
But then we hit the collapse, the ultimate lament. Remember that breathtaking, three-tiered theological skyscraper we just built? The heavens, the sea, the earth? Well, right as it's completed, the text violently pulls the rug out from under us. We crash brutally back into that heavy historical reality we started with, the Israelite exile. The crown is in the dust, the walls are breached, the covenant is seemingly renounced. In fact, within the wider collection of Psalms, this specific poem is situated at the absolute darkest point of the narrative, the threshold of exile, where the Davidic hope seems entirely, permanently extinguished. Out of this total darkness comes a desperate, agonized question: where is your steadfast love of old? The author turns all of that immense cosmic praise we just spent time unpacking into a weapon of bitter protest. The audacity here is just incredible. The psalmist is demanding to know how the God who completely rules the heavenly council and effortlessly crushes the chaos sea could just stand by and let that exact same chaos overwhelm his earthly king. And this, right here, is exactly why the two halves of this text cannot be separated. The lament doesn't contradict the hymn of praise, it depends entirely on it. The praise was the collateral against which the lament is staked. It's basically the ancient equivalent of suing someone for breach of contract by reading their own invincible resume back to them. You made these guarantees. You are incomparable in heaven. You crushed dragons in the sea, so why is this happening? The greater the praise, the sharper the protest. So, what does this all mean for us? The text doesn't actually offer an easy answer, and it certainly doesn't tie things up with a neat little bow. It leaves us sitting right there in the tension. But it shows us that this bitter complaint is actually the ultimate act of faith. I mean, you don't demand faithfulness from a God you've stopped believing is faithful. If Yahweh truly reigns over the heavenly council and crushes the chaos dragon, can the present ruin really be the end of the story? The author refuses to believe that the God who masters the storm will ever be overthrown by it. It's a powerful reminder that holding God, or even holding our leaders, accountable to their promises isn't a lack of faith. Sometimes it is the ultimate proof of it. So that leaves us with one final lingering question. How and when will the true king return to calm the waters once and for all?